There we go. Hello, welcome to Down and Dirty with Badger State Tractor Pullers. I'm Greg Elsing. Tonight we have John Mears from the Lucas Oil Pro Pulling League on. Going to talk about a few of the safety updates for this season required in all classes and any other changes that might have come up. John, what do you think? The first thing, what's the biggest thing you're changing this year?
First off, is probably the compressor cover blanket for all classes, all turbochargers. And even on the multi-charger systems doing the atmospheric chargers. We go back to middle of January, and we saw a pro stock charger come apart. Yeah, it was in a controlled environment, and we saw one kind of come loose a little bit. That's not what we want. So with the helps of the folks from this is just for anything bigger than 6-inch. For the help of Bamber Engineering and the guys at Taylor Motorsports, we helped design that restraint for what they ran at Louisville, like what you did, and the rest of the guys.
Yep.
Stainless ring. I think it's 3/16 with 3 straps on it. I think that's just the right move moving forward for anything that's larger than 6-inch. But first off, we got to say that with all this turbocharger stuff is we got to take a time out for Jim at Weimer, Dustin and Brandon Hart, Ryan up at Apex, and Dennis there at Fair Valley. All the turbocharger manufacturers have been wholeheartedly behind helping whatever they can do to mitigate the risk of what we're doing moving forward. The turbocharger manufacturers were really relevant at a meeting at the PRI show. There was, I think, 3 different manufacturers in the same room, all working to strive to go in the right direction. Even with some drag racing associations were included in the room. So, but that's where we're at with the 6-inch stuff. But mainly, even we've seen it work in a lot of the classes. The turbocharger blanket, whenever a compressor cover wants to fail, the blanket can hold it inside. We've been going through that with a couple of tech schools the last week out on the East Coast and the 2 New York groups. We'll get up to you guys in Dirk momentarily, but just that blanket that Taylor and Stroud makes, it's just a fantastic fit. And you never know when one of these turbochargers is going to come unglued. You're the first one to know that, Greg. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I just think that moving forward, that's going to be one of the best devices that's ever been implemented in the sport of pulling.
All right, like the turbocharger you're talking about before when it came apart on the dyno, did it have a cover on it then, or or the blanket?
No, it didn't. And I don't want to get into like what Jim did because there's I'm going to say 90% of the turbochargers out there in the pro stock class are Weimers, and Hearts have got a couple 4.5 out there that are that were in the winner's circle on Saturday night. So, but the way that cover is manufactured, it just there's a failure time. We don't know how long does a turbocharger last. We've not had to think about that very much.
Right.
And when that one failed, it makes you think about it. In the world that we're living in right now, we don't need that,
Nope.
to say that. And way that is engineered, and I consider it kind of like a supercharger restraint. With the help of Larry, I said we got to come up with something. Bamber had some stuff that was already on their website, and I know a lot of guys were like, "Oh, this is going to be a cobbled up mess, and it's going to be a pain in the ass to put on," that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be simple, but yet strong and efficient. And we had to go through, I think, one or two prototypes. And to get that device made, I think we were 15 days. I think we got the call about it on the 11th and had them in house within, I think, by the 28th or 29th of January. But, a big part of that is the help of Mike Witt and the Farm Show Committee on getting that thing put together and with the urgency and all the pullers to adapt to it. And you put yours on, I believe it takes all of about 10 minutes, if that. You got to take
Yeah.
the guillotine off, slides right over the compressor cover, and it's got 4 bolts that put it together on the backside. And yeah, there you go. That's one of the first prototypes that we had up and going for everybody.
Yeah, you don't even notice once you have it on there. You don't even notice it. It's underneath mine fits under the blanket, and you need this and the blanket yet, correct?
For pro stocks, anything bigger than 6-inch turbo.
Yeah.
I think at some point that'll probably be a down the road, if not sooner, for some even like the classes like the 5.0 Pros. I think there's some folks working on a complete Kevlar blanket for the compressor cover that's already going through testing as well. But ideally, that was supposed to go on the outside of the blanket to kind of keep everything inside. But I think at Louisville there was maybe 1 or 2 guys that were able to do that. But just the size of the scope of the blanket, it's just a lot easier to put the ring over on first and then put the blanket over top of it, because it's a son of a gun to strap them, tighten up them belts, the 5 or 6 belts that go around the compressor cover.
Right. Right. What about the exhaust side? What we call the potato slicer? Or
Yeah,
what?
that's the
That,
that's the 6-star that the Jim has. It's been tested, and of course, we're still running our 1/2-inch bolts behind that. I know there's some people that are going to argue about that. My argument to it is, when they've had seat belts in vehicles since they were built, right, and then they put airbags in them, we didn't take the seat
yeah.
belts out of the cars, and I've heard that, it's 100 horse or 50 horse or 20 horse. Really, a pro stock's making near 5,000 horsepower. Does 100 horsepower really make a difference? I know some people will probably want to argue that point. I know in some of the other classes there's some major deficiencies, but pullers are smart. There'll be a way to be advantageous on what their restriction is, whether it be the Apex unit, the Apex Turbo Star, or what Jim makes. Jim's got some other pieces for like the Light Pros and the Limited Pros that work very, very well.
Yeah. We put it on our limited pro before Shipshawana and didn't notice a lot with it, on the dyno. A little bit, but not much.
Right, right.
You know, getting it.
And through that whole process, I know Clint had to do one for his pull, and we were running out of time, and who could come up with the pieces fast enough. And uh, for what it was at that point in time, it was a great fit. But things, of course, always evolve in the world of pulling. Somebody always builds a better mousetrap, right?
Yep.
So, you've got the Star for all the 6-inch stuff, and what Hearts have got is they've already got their 1/2-inch bolts inside of the exhaust housing. So that's a bonus. We just updated our turbocharger containment stuff this morning, actually. So you've got the bolt Hearts are putting their bolts inside of the housing, trying to, of course, mitigate the exhaust wheel, the turbine wheel, to get outside of the housing. We think the housing is the strongest piece, and we're testing those already. So,
Yeah.
and that's the Hart device, and then Apex Turbo Ryan's piece that has the bolt in the middle that goes up and almost touches the shaft. Again, it's that part of keeping the shaft and the wheel inside of the housing is what we're looking for moving forward.
Right. It worked on mine in Louisville. We've seen the pictures. We had them on the show. I showed them to you too. That the wheel is still in the housing.
Hmm.
It hardly even damaged that that star. So I have faith in that now too. But the other question I had was, we talked to Luke in Europe. They have a containment on the intake side too, a cage or something. Has there been any talk about that or?
That's already been brought up. It's what's the best route. I think probably at some point it'll just be some sort of bolt or device. Actually, I talked to Robbie Lemke about this. Of what can we put out in front of it, the air open, is what do we put, like a mud flap of some sort? I'm talking a mud flap, but like a piece of 1/4 inch aluminum, or putting something like another bolt through the or a pin through the compressor cover to where it doesn't allow that the compressor wheel to come out. Or if it does, it's going to bang around before it gets out. But that's going to be some of the next stuff that's being tested. And it's not, we don't plan on a turbocharger breaking, but how do we demonstrate that and keep everything inside?
Yeah, well, you can put it in too low a gear and spin it too fast. That'll bring it out. Yeah. So, but other than that, the turbo, that kind of covered everything in the turbo area, right? That you're talking about. That was our main concern for changes this year is the turbo.
Yep. And even, I'm trying to remember when we came back, when we first did the cable, we put a cable around the turbocharger. We thought, man, this is going to be great. And you go back and look at some of the pictures. We used Dan Christiani's turbo as a demo. We put an 1/8 inch cable around it. Man, we were really doing something back then. Again, there's better mousetrap, and we've seen like some alcohol tractors blow off their compressor covers due to the detonation factor. And once you have the blanket all the way around it, we're removing the cables out of the situation, the equation. I know some people have had cables go through the turbocharger, unfortunately, and but again, there's always a better mousetrap getting built. I mean, there's a Kevlar blanket being developed now for the compressors, so just give it time. Pulling has some of the most ingenious people involved, and that's what makes it really fun to be a part of. Everybody's always thinking about something. Like I said, Robbie was already coming up with some sort of device to put out there by the intercooler to make it as a stop shield, if you will. Well, yeah, there's all kinds of things. And I think there was some pieces of your exhaust wheel that was in the pipe, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if that was yours or Link's pipe that I saw. I don't know. I've seen so many turbochargers and pictures in the last 90 days, 120 days, that it's like, man.
Right.
Yeah.
So it isn't just you guys come up with good, some kind of idea and say this is it. You guys have to send it to SFI and have it approved or anything like that? Or what do you do?
There's a little bit of a different situation there. I think some of the testing that they did was good, but the people that have seen the most destruction are the turbocharger guys in their dyno rooms, right? Like, I know Jim's seen it where he dynos. Hearts have had stuff come apart. That's where I think the biggest issue is having a button or a bolt or a boss on the end of that, on the edge of your containment device is the biggest thing, because there's a lot of dairy farmers that are involved, and you don't ever want to be away from the cow when it gets kicked. You want to be right next to it because it's not going to build up much speed. And I think that's where some of the best part is. And again, if you're going through that testing procedure, you've got to blow it up, right? And they're going to have to blow it up a couple of times. So ideally, keeping that shaft and the wheel inside of the housing is bar none one of the best ways to stop it.
I agree. Even if it was one blade across with a bolt and up against that nut on the compressor wheel or something. Because I think the exhaust side is figured out with that star. I really do. I think that if it didn't come out of mine, it ain't coming out on any of them, I don't think. But I hate to say that, but
yeah, I don't want
to. Yeah.
Apex had one to come apart and go through 2 stories of their building and back into the dyno room somebody put on there.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I
don't know.
Whole key to it is in motorsports is the safety, not just the safety of the competitors and the flag people and officials, but also the fans in the stands. You can't skimp on safety, when it comes to that. It's just, and, personal wise too, you get turbocharger come apart through a thin pipe and go through the dash, you're sitting in the seat, it's, or create big fire or whatever, it's just, you got to have the safety equipment or we won't have this sport.
Right. And I always go back to the point of John is, you pick on a guy's helmet or maybe a pair of fire gloves or his fire suit, and you're like, hey, man, it's time to update that fire suit. Oh, my goodness. I got to go buy another $300, $400 fire suit. But when the new turbocharger, the injection pump comes out, they're first in line for that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that big of a deal. So, yeah, there's sometimes we have to take a step back and look at the entire equation that we're all trying to make better.
Yep. So along them lines, when I tell everybody about the helmets, what, this year too?
Yeah, I think it's 2015, I think. Is it 2015 or 2020? Yeah, there's so many numbers. The rule book
2015.
The rule book will be online under the driver dashboard. As soon as we get that, we have some rules come back from the East Coast guys. They had some stuff they had to adapt on their semi class, and we'll get those updated and posted online as quick as we can. We have a tech meeting with our folks down at Mid-South, down at Lawrenceburg, Tennessee on Wednesday night with Russell Counts and Rollo Shelton, the comp director down there. So yeah, we're slowly but surely getting all this stuff taken care of and moving forward for all of our officials nationwide.
Yeah.
What's the helmet?
Yeah, go ahead, John. That's the same thing I was going to ask.
What was the question?
The helmet has to be 2015 and newer and Schnell 95 rating, right?
I think it's, yeah, 2010. No, excuse me, 2015. I'm used to the old stuff. I haven't got all the new stuff in my head burned in there yet. But if everybody goes inside your helmet, you can look inside. You can flip it upside down. There's an orange tag. And you go in there and look at the tag, and that's where you can tell. A lot of people get, they'll buy a helmet and they'll say DOT approved.
Yeah.
Well, DOT is, completely different. That is for impact off of the asphalt. And a lot of the Snell rating is due to fire issues. And, when there is a fire, that it gives you more time to get out of the equation.
Yep.
Some will have bolt tags outside of the back of them. It'll be DOT Snell 95 approved. Some it'll have both on them. I've seen that.
Yeah.
And that adds about $300 to the price of the helmet. is what I've found out. But
for your helmet, Greg, that's your helmet because it's capturing all those brains inside of your helmet,
right,
man.
Right.
Everybody else is way less than that. I mean, we want to protect that head of yours.
Yeah, a lot of good advice comes out of it, right? Right.
His head sock, that's big too.
Right. Right. And then other safety stuff, any other changes, big changes this year?
Safety stuff, I don't believe so. We were working on some of our 3.0 diesel trucks. We had some tire stuff, but I think that's all. I think that was a big chunk of the winter time was turbochargers for sure. Of moving forward and making sure everything is implemented. And what was it? 2 years ago we were on cables around engines. It always just keeps changing, right? Nobody goes to the dyno and says, "Man, boy, I hope I don't make any more power this year," right? Like that's the last thing that's ever being said is, where do we got pictures.
Well,
picture. He won't be able to look at it when he's on here live, but
right.
Is there anything with fire suits or gloves, shoes, anything that way changing?
No, that's all stuff, minimum of single layer guys that don't have working doors. That's a double layer suit, or excuse me, no working doors, but a hatch. That's like a 3-layer suit, 3.2, 3.2A,
Yeah. Do you
change? There was some stuff on some fire suits that were getting produced, and you have to watch on that dye sublimation stuff. There was some issues of overseas stuff coming in, and it wasn't as fire retardant. And then the thread that goes into the embroidery wasn't fire retardant. There's all little nuances here and there that you got to watch out for on the custom suits. But I think everybody that is dealing in the pulling world is pretty spot on with what they have. I think that was some drag racing stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. So one thing, when I flew into the military, you could never where you had to wear cotton socks and cotton underwear too because of flash fires. The polyester socks and stuff would melt to people's skin. I don't know if you ever,
That
the fire
was-
suit would be fine, but it gets so hot that the stuff underneath would melt.
And that's why, Greg, that's why a lot of our officials, we wear those undershirts that are fire resistant,
Yep.
is to give them a couple extra times. Because if they're in there fighting the fire before the fire team comes off from the side of the track, they can get in there and help battle that a little bit. And then that was one of the things of today's announcement was adding AKE's fire extinguishers to the program. They can shoot a long ways. Even with our cold fire stuff, it could shoot a long ways, but that keeps the guy out of the equation, the official, to keep him from being able to fight a fire at a safer distance.
Right. And I seen what's the name of the fire safety that came on board as a sponsor?
Yeah, AKE.
Yeah. They're a new sponsor of Lucas Oil.
Of Pro Pulling League, yeah.
Pro Pulling League, yeah. Yep. So that's good to have them on board too, right?
Yeah, and they're going to look at expanding their program with some really nice, they've got some complete systems to go on combines and that sort of thing. That you can just have a complete suppression system put on a machine. So I think there'll be a really big help to the Pro Pulling League pullers.
Yep. Good.
Did you guys adopt that skid plate on the mini rods too?
Yeah. That's I've kind of dumped a lot of that onto Larry on his table, get some of that stuff done. I think that's a good equation, and I think that goes, even across to like the limited mini run class of what Clint runs out west on the Western Series. So
Okay. Steel or certain thickness aluminum, right?
Yeah.
Like quarter or like 1/8 inch steel or something. I thought I seen.
Yeah, I believe that's what the numbers are. Yeah.
That's a good
Then
thing.
we put a rule on the turbo limits for Pro Stock this year too. If you want to explain that a little bit, John.
Yeah, we had we started out, we've had this conversation a couple of times, and are we probably too late? We can always argue that point. When we started our meeting in Louisville, I said, guys, what about having a turbo limit? And everybody was like, no, we're against it. And I said, yeah, but we don't want it to go any bigger than where we're at now. And that's where the 6.5 had come in. And everybody was underneath that limit at that point. And we did capture the exhaust side. But if you go back to the people that, maybe were against limits, they're not on the track now. They're not, pulling wrenches still with the guys that are on the circuits or in the regional areas. But I know, Greg, your Badger State group, Jeremy Smith at Ohio State was like, hey, we're all for this. Like, the next step is going to be 7 inches, right? And I get
Right.
it. And, at some point, we're going to have to build new hoods. You're going to have 4-wheel drive tractor hoods because there's just not enough space and real estate underneath those things to do all that. So, I think that was the best bet. Jim made us a tool up to use to check, and I know a lot of people were checked, and it seems like many people are happy with that implementation. And there's still a lot of guys at 6.2. Some of the best running tractors are not nowhere near as close to a 6.5 compressor wheel.
Right. That's I was happy. I had a 6.2 and I was happy with that one until I had problems, but I might still go back to the same one. But the newer ones they call them wide bodies, turbos, and they've got a longer shaft in them and more support on each end. And the shaft is from 1/2 inch to 9/16 on Weimer's version of it. Yep. So that'll be that'll help a lot too. And most of the guys have them already, I think.
Yeah. Again, here, we keep going back to this. There's always a better mousetrap being built. You know what I mean? Like we keep getting better stuff made, and there's a continual thing to take the pressure off the bearing system, right? Like here you go. Yep. Jim's back to the drawing board, making things better all the time. Yeah, all these turbocharger guys are doing that. They're all trying to figure out how to make a better, durable, more powerful product, and that's their MO moving forward. I just, you wouldn't think that going from a 1/2 inch shaft to a 9/16 shaft would make that big of a difference, but it's already making headway on the dyno and durability.
Right. Yeah. People don't want to buy a new turbo every other week because they've wrecked them. I mean, that's happened. We've had turbos in other classes that make 2 passes and they were junk after that. You have to buy a new one. Nobody wants to do that. Even if it's better performance, nobody wants to do that. You got to keep them safe. And I think like you say, everybody's working at that and making it better. But,
and again, where's horsepower? How much horsepower do we need in a pro stock, right? We got better tires. We're putting that to the ground. Now we're dialing in the horsepower a little bit more. Like I said, there's, 44 to 5,300 is what I've heard on dyno horsepower. It's like, are you kidding me? 5,000 horsepower. Like it's pretty incredible stuff of what we're doing. And I'd hate to know what those torque numbers really are,
Right. Yeah. Nobody's going to tell you when they really make the big one. Right. Yeah. To keep that to yourself. But, tires, checking tires circumference. You have any problems with looking at tires when we were in Louisville this year?
Yeah, we didn't have anything reported back. I think everybody was. I think we only had one mod that was even close because that was kind of a new set of tires. But here you go again. The tire cutters, Chad Mayhill at Nichols and Aaron out there at Pro Puller. They know where the rules are at. They know where it needs to be, and they're building a product that works for people. That's the best part is when you have the manufacturers behind the sport making it better. Everybody's winning in this situation. The pullers are getting a better product and becoming more successful. So yeah, there's not been any issues. Our go no go gauge that we started, you guys got. I think you took one of mine or you built a copy of it. I think that works fantastic. That's a quick check, and that's still one of those things of we talked about that air pressure. Oh gosh, I guess it's been like 15 months ago now. The width of it, it says the rule was written in 1980 for that, 10 pounds of air. I think at some point we'll pull that back when we feel the most comfortable that all the tires that are being made now, at 6 pounds of air is kind of a race ready number. Then we can just check the width, and it says the guy's going across to the scales, the drawbar pad, whatever it is, that it's there. It's not, I know there's some other rules that out of a mold, not out of a mold, and heat treating stuff. Just I want to know if it's legal right here today or not. That's
right. That's the way I feel too. I think you showed up today to pull with this tire. It can't be certified a year ago, and you heated it and blew it up a little big or something. And I think it's got to be checked at that event that day. It's no different than your turbo.
Well, it goes back to the rim width, right? Like we put a narrow set of rims on a tire, and next thing you know, they get it 2 or 3 inches narrower, and then all of a sudden we get more circumference. And it was legal at one point, and that's one thing that I never understood, 3 or 4 years ago, that it had a rim width mandatory. So if it wasn't a 26-inch rim, if one of us was on 25, is the guy illegal or legal, or how do you police that rule? And so that's why we came to take that part of the rim width out of the rule book equation. And we're just going to measure it right there at 10 pounds of air, and 210 inches of circumference is the max.
Yeah. And if you put them on an inch wider rim, they usually shrink circumference might go down 1/2 an inch, right? It isn't a lot.
No, I don't know on that. That's probably a better Chad or a Bob question. I know that for every pound of air, I think it's a half inch of circumference. We were looking at that. From 210 to 5 pounds should be like 2.5 inches. So some tires that were really really big when they first came out, that was some of the stuff we were trying to guess and make good judgments on.
And that's the thing too, with the width too is going to be a judgment thing too. Like the tool, if I always figure if I can get it on there, it's good. If I can't get it on, then it's not good. You might have to work to get it on there, you're good. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, we had some tires, and this goes back to the old tires, back to when Bob made his first set of Park Pullers. Some of them were really, really large and ballooned out. And I know I've seen 2 or 3 of those sets trimmed up to make them inside of the 25-inch width. And, they still work great. Like, it's not like that was the end all be all to that set of tires. It's just, that tire game is crazy right now. There's just, lug count and bar height. And man, I was having a conversation about that earlier with somebody. You know, if you take all the tire manufacturers and the different tires and all the different tread counts and tread depths, I think there's like 62 different combinations, 64 different combinations of tires that guy could pick from if he wanted to.
Really? Yeah. That too, and the tread width. You know, we're talking. The tool you designed and one we copied from you covers 3 lugs because they used to offset grind them.
Yep.
You know, that cutting edge was 25 inches, but it was set an inch to the right, and the next one was set an inch to the left. You know.
Yeah.
So you can't do that anymore. Just so people know that.
Yeah, and we're working on kind of a similar tool for the two-wheel drives. The tire is just so much different, and the mini rod and the two-wheel drive's kind of in the same category there. But you can't use the same principle just because of the diameter of the tire. But we've worked on basically like a really large set of calipers that we've been going with for now. But we've been working on kind of a similar tool to what we do with the 24.5s. Yeah.
Okay. John, you got any questions yet, or for me or
Oh,
John Muir?
Learning quite a bit more about the tire stuff. I knew some of it, but yeah, soaking it all in. It's good knowledge, and this is a lot of knowledge that the fans don't know behind the scenes, what goes on, you know, between tires and turbos and shielding and safety stuff that goes on. You know, they just see, you know, the 4-wheel drive truck, the 2-wheel drive truck, the mini rod, the pro stock, the super farm. You know, they see them go down the track, and as announcers, we try and explain a lot of different things that's going on, you know, how they're, you know, why they're choosing that side of the track, or, you know, weight wise, horsepower wise, you know, all the information you can. But this is just great information that they don't get to hear. They don't get to see. You know, this is all behind the scenes stuff, all the things you work on behind the scenes, you know, during the year, John, and when the season's over. You know, it's, and Greg knows this too, you two especially, and I did some of that too, and I was the president of an organization. It never stops. Pulling season's done in September. You're just turning the page to do another job from then till spring again. You know, sponsors, and scheduling, and adding a new pole, and maybe there's a new class or a new safety piece, or, you know, that's a lot to put together.
Yep. It's
All right. Hey, Stanley, I got a question for you, man. Somebody asked me this last week. I was I was like, that's a pretty good question. Some fans were at Louisville walking around, and they said, all right, so what's the big trick to putting the fuel in the water behind the driver on a pro stock tractor?
What's the big trick?
Yeah, why are we doing that?
Why? Just a handy place so it's not sticking out front. You got more room for an intercooler.
I mean, let's talk about intercoolers. Have you seen some of these cool intercoolers that are out there? I mean, there's no more space for turbocharger because we got all these intercoolers. There's no place for fuel and water. I mean, underneath that the chassis area. I mean, how impressive is some of that stuff?
Yeah, for a long time too. You know this too, John. That from the tanks that were out front, then it was 2 tanks, then it was just 1 tank, and then guys were building their own tanks and putting them down in the chassis, sometimes underneath the hood, to make more room for the intercooler. Well, then you've seen intercooler tanks on the belly bars and different intercooler tanks to be made, and that's where you're getting at now, that the intercooler is so big that you need to have as big enough tank to hold ice and water and the pumps to cool that. So that's why they're putting it in the back. You know, batteries too. Batteries used to be down front. Now they're underneath the seat, right below the driver. You know, same thing. Make as much room as you can. And, you know, the older hoods, you can't fit all that underneath there. You know, that's why so many people are going to the newer style, not just because it's new, but it gives you that much more room to work with that stuff.
And that brings me to one of the next things that we're actually working on. You know, how many times has there been a tech official to come back? And this happens a lot in the first couple of events, and sometimes it happens at Louisville, is we pull on that kill switch, right? It's like, oh man, it won't pull. You know, and you've got the fuel tank and the water tank back there, and they're kind of not in the way, but these fabricators are doing a marvelous job of decorating these tractors and beautification, but making sure these kill cables actually pull without having, you know, 100 pounds of pressure. And that's one of the things that we've been looking at here recently, is that should only take about 10 or 12 pounds of pressure to pull that out, because we're using zip tie. And that's one of the things we do at our tech school is not all zip ties are created equal. Some of them won't break unless they got 40 pounds of pressure, and we don't need that, right? Like we want something that's going to break in an emergency situation. And we've been talking about, some of these guys put 2 or 3 tie cables around it and it won't pull. But we're going to probably start middle of the summer, start checking to make sure that we can pull actually the guillotine shut with, a one hand, let's say 8 to 10, 12 pounds worth of pressure. In some of these tractors, the automotive stuff, the mini rods and 2-wheelers are all pretty easy with their air kills and their air switches by all means. And the 4-wheel drive trucks are the same way, but this thing never stops, John.
Yeah. The cable thing's hard too, because you got to remember you got a long cable going from the back all the way through the chassis, and then wiggle it up so it doesn't get bent or kinked, and then hooked into the air shutoff, with a clamp setup that doesn't pinch it too hard. But the other part of that's a lot more resistance, to pull that through there, to get that to work, and it's manual. It's, it's something that, it's not like it's electric, or you got like electric motor on it, an electric solenoid. If that goofs up and doesn't work, this is solid manual. It's gonna pull it. And sometimes when it does get pulled, those cables are junk.
Yep.
So it's violent.
Somebody says we use the same system drag racers use for their parachute. It works like butter. I don't even know what that is, but sounds good.
Guess we got to go to NHRA. What are you guys doing? Let's go.
Right. One thing I do is when I tech tractors, I make the guys get up in the seat and pull the air shot off from the seat, because nobody does that. And how many times we've had to tweak them after that because they didn't work, because nobody ever, everybody just goes behind, gives the thing a jerk. I make guys get up in the seat and do it. And I'm going to tell a funny Jason Schultz story. When Jason Schultz, hopefully you're watching.
No,
I did this to him. Told him his first pull. He says, you got to be able to pull your air shot off from your seat. So he reaches around behind him, is going to try to pull it on. I know Jason's going to hate me for telling that story, but I said, no, Jason, this is button on the dash. You got pull. But it makes guys realize, hey, this has to work too. Your fuel dump and your air shut off and all that stuff have to work from the seat. Check all that stuff. But it's hard to do if the puller's not in his tractor to do that. You know what I mean? A lot of times guys will go pull the air shut off and leave a zip tie there and walk away.
Yeah.
No,
you
can't do that.
No.
And there are
guys,
like you said, even like our group, our small group, we went through a phase 2 where guys were put electrical tape around the plug part of it, so it stick to and it wouldn't come off when it needed to, or then they put a zip tie on it. Well, then they put 2 zip ties or whatever across it. Well, then it wouldn't pull out either. So, they made some changes too, just like you guys did on the national circuits with the minis. And, you got to make it so it does work when you need it to work. It's there for a reason.
Yeah, we've actually seen some of the rings break, and they weren't key rings. They were solid metal rings, and they've just yanked them so hard. They had so many zip ties on it that they were breaking cables. And that's one thing that we've been looking at. We had some old pictures of a mini rod, and I think it was down in Carolina with Chad Mackey, that they broke the ring. It pulled, but the zip tie was one of those, I don't know, heavy duty industrial style zip tie, and it's not going to pull. It's just not going to happen. We've used a lot of the Taylor cables. I think there's another one called Linco, I think, or Nelco is our other zip tie provider that we actually did some zip tie testing last spring on making sure everything was, in the right order and the right strength for what we're using on the track.
One thing you do too, John, when you get to the pull, everybody knows too, is you do test the sled to make sure that his whatever mechanism he has for pulling it is working too, right?
100%. Yeah. That was one of the funny stories I'll share, that we were it was at Louisville during the test sessions. And I don't remember who it was, but somebody had asked Vaughn to test the kill cable, and he tested it, but it hadn't come off the mud flap yet, up there on the edge, and it snapped, and I thought it was off of it or whatever. Breaks that off, but they said, they tested it 3 times the day before. But, these sleds going up and down the road, especially in the wintertime, there's salt, all that stuff. You've got to check that stuff. And we have had seen where one of the switch hits and nothing happens, and usually the solenoid or there's a wire that's loose on the little electric motor, and it doesn't take 2 seconds to fix it. But yeah, before we start, right before the national anthem, that's usually when I'm out there pulling cables, and I'll throw it on the ground, put it underneath my foot, and tell them to hit it, and let's go.
Yep.
And-
Yeah, definitely want to make sure that's working, because you can do all the stuff with the tractor, but if the sled guy can't do it, it
And
doesn't
a lot
matter.
a lot of them are actually starter motors that are used for that. So you think about, starter motors got a roll motor or V8 motor or whatever. That takes a lot of torque. So that motors are strong. So when you talk about zip ties that won't break and, the rings, that motor is stronger than hell that's pulling that kill switch off. And if you can't pull that kill switch with that, then something's wrong. That's
So
more.
like you said, you put it on your foot and let it go. You don't hook your finger in there and try and hold on to it. It's gonna rip your finger off.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just don't try to hold on to it. Put it under your foot, like you said, and let them do it. Don't, because it'll hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll break the little, I call it a dog collar or whatever it might be. I've seen them break those many a time. You know what I mean? Like when they pull and it just breaks. So there's a lot of force, like John said. Those are torquey little son of guns.
Yeah. Chuck just asked a question. He says, why isn't there a kill switch that doesn't need a zip tie to hold them in? I actually have one on the back of the mini rod that's off. It's a marine application. It's a button. It's a button, red button. It's black, plastic, red button. The wires come out of it. And it's got a plastic piece that slides over with like a little spring lock around it. And we got a solid ring through it. There's no zip tie. There's nothing holding that on there. And it's never come off. Even on a wild ride, I have never had it come off, ever fall off that thing. And you can walk up and take your finger and pull it off of there if you want to. So I've never, when we've had discussions with the other group, or, the mini rod group, guys squabbling over it, I've never had any trouble, ever. Never, ever have I ever had any trouble.
So that was a really good question. So, we've talked about, the zip tie, does it break? Well, if you could get the camera set in the right spot, I know it was Wheatland hooked to the Bunnage tractor, Hager sled. The amount of dirt that was flowing behind the tires and in front of the buckboard, the dirt clods actually came up, hit the kill switch, and disengaged one of the motors. Now, one of the things is if the kill switch is broken as the vehicle goes down the track, we will let them pull again. Okay. But if it's not broken and the kill switch, the capsule, whatever you want to call it, doesn't come off, then that's all on them, not on us, for a broken kill switch. So I know that's happened. And then I think, Boyd's 2018, 2019 left track at Fort Recovery, a kill switch broke at they're going down the track, just motoring, honky tonking, like a typical Steve Boyd pass. And the kill switch was broke. However it did it, dirt, whatever it might've been. It wasn't really much of a rough ride, and they had to come back and pull again. I think that tractor made 3 laps that night. Those are the 2 that I can pull off the top of my head.
Yeah.
A lot of
That's
the
it.
things is where you place it too. Like when you get to the ones for like the mods and the mini rods, where you place it, if it's got a long arc to it, or if there's something catching away, a bracket or a weight or something, you got to have that so it's free. There's nothing that'll be in the way there. It can bounce around and, whatever when you're going down the track, where it won't get that on it. It's hard when you get into the mods and the Grand National Minis, I guess you can say, or whatever, that you're right. They move so much dirt, and there's a pile when you're done.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where you can't make your zip tie too weak. It's got to be strong enough to hold that too. You got to find that happy medium.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I don't have. There's another question for you. Should all pullers be? Oh, go ahead.
Neutral, just as is required for a reverse light. So there's a reverse light and an in gear light, correct?
Oh, should all pullers have a neutral light? See, and I'm to the opinion I like to have a neutral light because you don't know if it's in a gear if it's not, right? Like it always go forward, and if there's no light on, when the guy is hooking, like when Hooker Bob's back there working, or what's the guy's name up at Macville that does the hooking? You know what I mean? I want those guys to be as safe as possible, right? Like I want them to know that, okay, it's in neutral, because we all know, like when lights come on, that means you can go to work, right? Like I get it that there's a reverse light, but there should be enough light everywhere that the hook guy or unhooked person shouldn't have any issues. But I'm a fan of having both lights on there, just so the person working back there can understand what's happening. And here you go again. The sled guys have made things better. At the top of the prism pole, they've got a light shining down as a work light, which has been a huge help at some facilities that may not have the best light overall.
Yeah, it does get. You try to have it lit up back there, but it does. Some places get dark and hard for them to hook up there, and it's nice to have that neutral light on so they have some light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Question. Also, does Badger State PPL allow an in-gear start? No.
Nope.
It's not supposed to start in gear.
That's true.
Not supposed to start.
And the new transmission, ProFab's got them figured out pretty good. They're pretty easy to wire and make work. I mean, it's very little work to do that.
All of them, STS, Boltman, TRB, same way. They're set up so there's a detent in there. The detent's in neutral. It shouldn't pop out of that. Either way. Yeah. Especially a blower motor or something. When you start it and they first light, if it's in gear, it's going to lunge forward. Standing in front of it, it's going to get smoked. So.
Yep. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our questions, John. If there's anything else you'd like to say or comment on, or thoughts on an electric setup.
I think you'd have trouble for like kill switches. Like I was talking before, electric motor and something in the back. I think you'd have trouble with that.
Well, I mean, I guess the only reason is he talking about that, or is they talking about like a limited RPM class where there's, that's how they plug into the box, That's what I thought when he said electric, that's where I was going with, because those RPM classes out in Pro Farm in the Western Series has got like a 110 outlet plug to verify that.
Our Pro Farms do too. When 3,000 RPM got a data logger box that sticks on the back of the buckboard, and they plug that in, reads it. But to kill it, like on a diesel, when you're running a mechanical pump, and you got to think the mini rods and anything that's there is mechanical. It's not electronic. Everything's still old school.
But some of the diesel trucks they have two different disconnects in the back of the bed. Now that I go back to that, some of the electronic common rail trucks, they do have I'm going to call it a plug style switch, and they have an air gate as well to pull on the air gate. But once they break contact, those guys the party's over for a common rail.
Right.
So
in the semi class, can they have an electronic ignition yet, or injection? I mean, electronic injection.
There's DeBrew's got an electronic.
Right. So do you have to? Is there anything different on his kill switch or setup then, or?
No, he's got an air. He has an air kill, and I think he has a one that goes back to his electronics as well. And then you got a master disconnect up on the side.
Okay.
So this Facebook user says we use electronic to kill some of the 4.1 semis. So
yeah,
basically it would shut your ECM down or something then for it.
Right.
The power to it, I'm assuming.
Yep.
Both. It's like a gas motor. If you shut the ignition off or ground the ignition, it's done that way.
No spark, nobody's home.
Yep. No spark, nobody's home.
So, any other big news in Lucas Oil sport sponsors or new events, John?
I think Christy's wrapping up an event for that July the 13th. Get that loaded in. Got some other sponsorship stuff to talk about in the next probably 7 to 10 days. A couple other sponsors have come on board. We're just kind of pacing ourselves here, right? The season's around the corner. I think our Mid-South group, they start pulling the 23rd, 24th in Hammond, Louisiana outside. And I think our Southern Pullers were supposed to have an event last weekend, but it rained out. So, those guys down south, they pull in the spring and the fall because it's too hot to pull in the summertime. So, I think overall, I think the number is 295 scheduled events under the Pro Pulling League umbrella for the 2024 season.
Wow.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
Last year was 272.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yep.
Have you guys came to this year yourselves for your PPL?
We've had some events move on their dates, and then we've had the Shipshawana event, the truck show that's up there with Shane Maston. I think that's the third weekend in June, and then we're going to go to we picked up on July the 12th. We added Troy, Missouri back to the schedule, and then Fairfield, Illinois is back on the schedule, I think, on that July the 12th, and then we're going to go outside of Chicago for the July 13th. Tollsboro, Kentucky added another day over at Matthew Meadows' hometown pull, so it's on like the 19th and 20th, and then everything else is pretty status quo, I think, throughout. I think there might be another Midwest region event at the end of the season, mid-September. I don't know. I don't look at that schedule. It's not time for me to pack my bag and get going yet.
Hey, that's Christy's job to set all that up, right?
Yeah,
the schedule.
just let me know where I got to go. When I go out the driveway, I'll have my suitcase packed and just tell me where I need to go.
All right. Well, our schedule is for Badger State should be up, and our plan is to have it done by next week, and done on our website. So it's hard, we don't put them up until we get anybody's contract back, and you send them the contracts, you get them in January, and still haven't gotten them all back. But people want to talk about the prices up a little bit of some of our shows, and it's hard. They have to make sure. I want them all to make money, or I don't want to have a show there, right? That's the name of the game. Yep. You don't want to be, the ruin of an event because you charge too much.
Yep. I think we're co-sanctioning that one over in Iowa, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Monticello. Yep.
Monticello, that'd be a nice event. And then, did you have anything else? I know your schedule is jam-packed anyways, Greg. Did you add anything else?
Yeah.
Other than that one?
Nothing else new this year. We're working on one next year. I think we'll have one up just above Wisconsin Dells. I was talking to the guys, and they really are interested, but they didn't have all the ducks in a row to do it this year. So next year we'll have one more up there, and that's about it. We're swamped.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have a weekend off in the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. My question is, when is the American Family Hospital poll? When's that poll going to be?
June 8th or something like that. I think it's because the sock poll is the 1st, so I would imagine that's the 8th.
Okay, so the second Saturday in June.
Yep. We moved my hometown poll. We moved it from August on top of Bowling Green and on top of the Badger Steam and Gas show. And there's so many things going on. We just said we're going to move it to a different day, and then June 1st is open, and we'll put it there. So that's everybody up there. Yeah. The schedule is full, and I try to get 16, 18 hooks for each class. I do. I really do. It's hard to do to make that happen. Some guy might have. What's that?
Do you find that it's a cyclical thing? 1 year you're going to be, booking the heck out of limited pros, and then the next year it's pros, and then, the next thing they want 4-1. You know what I mean? They want light limiteds. It's always changing and help freshening up your show. Right.
Well, last year Super Farm was short hooks, so I pushed them a lot last year, and all of a sudden they had 21 hooks. Then there was too many. So everybody took them that I pushed it. I didn't push them onto it. I suggested we go to Super Farm here, and that's what they did. I try to do that with all the classes. It's hard. It's really hard. And dollars rule everything. Sometimes you get a budget, and this is and they want these classes, but I got to get the budget done. But they want to guarantee these classes. So it makes it tough. You know how it is.
Yep.
It just.
Yep.
Yeah. Balance between all of it.
I thought a couple of years ago that Pro Stocks was going to be like, that we were down to like 5 and 6, and what was there, 4 new Pro Stocks this year? I mean,
right.
Go figure. Now there's 55 or 60 of them in the country.
Right. That's it. And everybody wants a Pro Stock class. They do. There's just not everybody. A place can have them. That's the way it is.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yep.
so many hooks a year. You can only run them so many times.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I want to run them in my hometown, and I don't because we have too many hooks for them already. So it's the way it is.
Yeah.
But well, John, I want to thank you for coming on and being part of our show here. I think it was pretty informative. I'm hoping everybody was listening and understands what they have to do this year. For the turbo, basically the blanket on the turbo was the big thing.
Yep,
Right.
that's it. And then, like I said, if you go under the Pro Polling League website and go under the driver dashboard, there's pictures, diagrams of all that kind of stuff. And I know, I think Larry's got himself a PPL Tech page up on Facebook, and he's manning that. So there's lots of questions. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's been a great asset to our team to help everybody move forward on different technical and safety issues.
Right. He's been around a long time.
Yep.
I've seen a lot of it.
We've got a great team.
What's that?
We got a great team, guys like yourself and Dave Moore and
Yep.
Jeremy and Chad Taylor. They're all putting it together. Clint down in the Western Series. There's just a lot of great people to help make it all up and make everything go forward.
Yep. The sport is growing, believe it or not. It is growing, so probably faster than we realize. But it's fun. It's a good bunch of people and I like working with everybody here. So
Yes, absolutely.
Again, thank you for being on. And you want to go thank our sponsors again, John? Or
Yes, and we shout out to Don Slama. Happy birthday to Don Slama Enterprises, one of our sponsors. Front Street Toys, Casper Egg, and Trip Downing Farms down there. Am I missing anybody? I don't think I'm missing it.
Yep, I think you got everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's great to have you on, and it's great to talk behind the scenes stuff like this, and people get to understand what goes on in the backside, of a show. And we haven't barely touched on anything, just the safety part of it. It's just it's so much that it's hard for everybody to know that this takes place. It's a lot of work.
Yep.
But thanks much. It's great to be affiliated with PPL. Glad you and Christy got things rolling and keep it rolling and growing. And it's great to be one big family.
Yep. No, we got a great group that's behind it. So looking forward for an entertaining 2024 summer.
It will be. Yep. Again, thanks. And next week we'll have John and Amy Meyer on the show. So pay attention to that. The Limited Pro. So I don't know if he's got a name on it yet, but it's still chrome or polished aluminum, whatever it is. But he'll be on next week. So thanks for coming on, guys.
All right.
Yeah.